All right, this is Pre-Algebra, classwork 159. Welcome to our remote online course. Kind of funny. So today's should be pretty easy. Objective for today is to solve problems involving simple interest. And then tomorrow or the next day we'll do problems involving not so simple interest. So if you'd like to follow along with me in your book, I'm on page 262. So let's just go ahead and talk about what this word interest means. It doesn't mean to be interested in something. Well, I guess if you're interested in money, then you have some interest, but it doesn't mean the same thing. I just put down a really good marker. So what this word interest means is it has to do with borrowing money. So when you borrow money from somebody, say you borrow money from your brother, right? So your brother gives you, I don't know what, 50 bucks, that's a lot of money. And then you just feel like, hey, I should just be able to pay him back the 50 bucks. No harm, no foul, I gave him the money back that I borrowed, right? But your brother says, oh, wait a second. You borrowed this money. I was without this money. You need to compensate me for this time that I was without this money. So when you pay me back, you need to give me, we'll say, $5, which is kind of a high interest rate for borrowing $50, but we can talk about that in a minute. So when you pay your brother back, you pay him back really $55, and he says, okay, it was worth lending my sister $50 to then make a profit of $5 on the money that I lent her. Does that make sense? So that's what this interest is all about. That's how banks are making their money. That's how a lot of people make money. People beyond what I probably know make money off of interest. When you sometimes are late paying a bill, you're charged interest. I couldn't even tell you. I'm sure parents that are watching, you could pause the video and explain circumstances in which you've paid interest in numerous times past on anything. We're going to get into compound interest tomorrow or the next day, so don't worry about the compound interest. We're just talking about purely simple interest right now. So let's go ahead and talk about, we can talk about the formula. I can give you the formula. It doesn't really mean much unless we put numbers and meaning to it. But the formula is interest, which we're going to let be a big I, is equal to the principal, not the which is the, we could call it the original amount. That's kind of a word we've been using a lot in here, times the rate, times the time that it was borrowed. So the rate is going to be your percentage times your time, like months or years. And we're going to talk more about how it's going to be, we're going to sometimes have a different time. Does that make sense? So you could have any amount of time. What's your question?
Don't know.
Okay. Does that make, so it's going to be this kind of crazy formula that we're going to plug into. But let's go ahead and stick an example with it. So example 1 for today. We have, we'll do the one that you can read in your book so I don't have to rewrite it down. It says, how much interest do you pay if you borrow $640 for 3 years at an annual rate of 15%? So where these numbers are going to go, your interest, okay, my interest, my big I, is equal to my principal amount, my original amount. So how much I'm borrowing is $640, okay? My rate is 15%. Now, we talked a lot about this. I can't just write 15%. I need to turn 15% into what?
A decimal.
A decimal. Good job. All right, into a decimal. Okay? Times my time, which is 3 years. Okay? So I have my amount multiplied by my rate multiplied by my time. So the interest that I'm going to pay on this is $288. So this is just the interest. How much are you actually going to repay if you borrow $640 at a 15% rate for 3 years? Just tell me the math that you would do. Cricket. Let's think about it. The math. So I borrow this much. So here, you borrow this much from your brother, okay, at 15% for 3 years. This is the interest you charge, or you accumulate the interest. This is the $5 you're paying back on your $50 loan. Does that make sense? So how much are you actually going to need to pay back if this was a loan?
You can add it to the original?
Yeah, I'm going to have to pay back my original by 640, plus my 288. Does that make sense? So I've got what? 8, 2, 1, 8, 9, $928. I can tell you 15% is rather steep interest rate for a loan, maybe that in my opinion. But you're going to have to pay back this amount. This is just the interest. So in order to borrow this amount with these stipulations, this is the amount of money you have to pay back. Does that sound like a good deal to you or not? I mean, it's like a third. What on your calculator really quick do 288 divided by 640. If I round up to 3 and round up to 650, it's more than a third. We got 45. It's almost 50%, really. Yeah, almost 50%. That's quite steep. All right, does that make sense? Let's go ahead and look at example 2 from your book. It says Sarah Sachs borrowed $3,650 for 4 years at an annual rate of 16%. How much money will she repay in all? So we just did that with this one, but let's go ahead and look at that. So let's go ahead and line it all up. So we've got example 2 for today. We've got, she borrows $3,000, so her principal is $3,650. She's got an interest rate of 16% for 4 years, times the 16%. Do I want to use 16%? 0.16 times 4 years. So this is her interest. So let's go ahead and crunch these numbers really quick, and we should get 2,336. Does that make sense? So how much is she going to repay for borrowing this? You add. Okay, I'm going to add to my principal amount my interest. So my my principal amount plus my interest equals what? 6, 8, 9. Yeah. I mean, she's repaying a lot. This interest rate is the amount of interest that she's going to repay for borrowing that, she probably should have just, I mean, it's close to almost double. It's like a little bit more than 1,000 less. It's a little ridiculous. We're working with good numbers though, big numbers. All right? Does that make sense? Yeah. You borrow, you repay. Kind of like how I said you borrow $50 from your brother. He's just going to charge you $5 for the time that you borrowed this money. He didn't have to do anything, but all you did was borrow it, so you got to repay him something. All right, let's go ahead and look at example 3. And I'm using the examples from your book right now, so simply to simplify the process. All right, Rennie Solomon paid $375 in simple interest on a loan of $1,500 at a 12.5% rate. What is the length of time for the loan? All right, so going back to this, we've got interest is equal to the principal times the rate times the time. So let's go ahead ahead and substitute in for what we do know here. So he paid, his interest is $375. His principal was $1,500. That's the amount that he borrowed. The rate was 12.5%, so 0.125. And we're looking for how much time? Does that make sense? So, we are going to just balance the equation. So go ahead and just balance this equation. 1,500 times 0.125 is 187.5 t. Divide both sides by 187.5. And you get t is equal to what? What'd you get? Go, go, go. Come on, people in the video, go. You can do it. People that are actually physically here, go. You can do it. It's 2.
Okay.
Okay? So t equals 2. So what does 2 mean?
Interest. 2 years.
2 years. The loan was paid in 2 years. Paid off. All right. You ready? Are we okay here? And the reason I'm not using the whole board is so that I don't have to reposition the camera 800 times because my swivel is not working. All right, we've got example 4. So example 4 is kind of when I rewrote this at the beginning, we're going to have time. What we have been working with is time in terms of years. Years is kind of the base unit that we're going to see. So if we have the base unit time is 1. 1 stands for 1 year. Now what happens when we have less than 1 year? What kind of number are we going to be working with?
A decimal.
A decimal or
Fraction.
a fraction. Does that make sense? So it'll tell you when what the base of the rate is, and I'll show you. So example 4 here says George Landon paid $585 in simple interest on a loan of $6,500 for 6 months. What was the annual rate? So let's go ahead and substitute in. And I'll use a different color here for what we know. All right, so we've got our principal rate, our original amount, which is actually, sorry, we have our interest. We have the interest. So the interest that he paid is $585. The original amount was $6,500. We're looking for the rate. So that's our R. And the interest, we have 6 months. We're looking for the annual rate. So when I compare 6 months to 1 year, how long is 6 months? How do I represent 6 months as a number?
25. A year.
6 months is how much of a year?
Half.
Half. Does that make sense? So I'm going to either use 0.5 or 1/2. So that's my time. I don't know my rate. This is my principal. This is my interest. All right? So let's go ahead and balance. I have 585 is equal to half of 65 is what? 32.5. 32.5. Move my decimal 2 times. So 3,250 R. Divide both sides by 3250. And I get R is equal to, let's think, 18%. So, my interest rate here, my simple interest rate is 18%. We okay? And it's simple interest. All right, we're going to do a couple of examples that aren't in your book really quick. let me see. All right. If you're watching on the video, I'm gonna pause it and then restart it because it's faster to upload if I don't have a giant video.